sporting events that affect the world globally. The next question affecting the sports world is what will happen with the 2020 Summer Olympics. Canada has decided they will not send athletes to Tokyo for the Summer Games and will reevaluate if the Games are postponed by 1 year. The country's Olympic Committee announced Sunday night. So later Sunday, the Australian Olympic Committee issued a statement saying it is advising its athletes to prepare for competition in 2021. The IOC will look at postponing during 4 weeks of talks. Though Japan's prime minister said a postponement would be unavoidable. Here's Sandy Morris, who was the 2016 Olympic silver medalist pole vaulter. Take a listen.
In my opinion, the best thing to do is to postpone it until next season at the same time. So a 12-month postpone, because then that would still allow all of the athletes to have our usual cycle. And cycles are very, very important to an athlete being at our 100% A game.
Okay, that was Sandy Morris with her take. Guys, the IOC noted that canceling is not a consideration at this time. Stephen A., talk to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, they need to postpone it. I completely agree with Sandy Morris. Obviously, you have a plethora of Olympians out there who agree with her as well, and I stand with them. And I think the nation, the world needs to stand with them, not just America, the entire world. Canada is already on board. Australia is already on board, calling for postponements of at least a year. They are absolutely right. And here is the reason why. I've personally spoken to a couple of Olympians, obviously, that were a bit reluctant to come on camera and talk about it, even though I think they'll change their mind in short order. Here's the reality. The Olympians, because there has been no cancellation, they're being forced to train. Because you can't sit up there and not train and then turn around and they say, excuse me, the Tokyo Games are still going to go on, and you show up unprepared. You've been training for this for over 3+ years, going on 4 years. You've got to be ready to go. As a result, in order to make yourself ready to go, you've got to get out there and train, argue in all likelihood with other athletes. What does that mean? The social distancing that the world is imploring all of us to practice, the IOC isn't on board with that. Now, what kind of sense does that make? You know the athletes are going to train because they've got to be ready. In order to be ready, they got to train with and against one another, which means they can't practice social distancing. And everybody in the World Health Organization, federal governments locally, governments throughout the world have been imploring people to do the same thing in Italy, Korea, Japan, China, everywhere. Stay the hell away from each other. But the IOC hasn't canceled anything, thereby forcing these athletes to literally subject themselves or potentially expose themselves to the coronavirus. Now, that's just counterproductive to everything that we're being preached about. So the point is, delay the games by a year. That way it gives athletes the opportunity to step away, go back with their families, practice social distancing, be safe not just for themselves, but for all of us without jeopardizing themselves in Olympic competition. That is what needs to be done. It needs to be done immediately, and the IOC needs to get off their behinds and make a decision, and make the decision in the best interest of people across the world. That's what they're supposed to be doing. It's what they're not. Do it now.
Max?
The Olympics is a giant piece of commerce dressed up as an opportunity for a brotherhood or sisterhood of nations, and simultaneously not only promoting this idea of this kind of world coming together, but also of nationalism, because you're rooting for your home country and all that. It's really a brilliant, giant piece of commerce in which, by the way, you don't have to pay the athletes. The Olympics are rife with corruption up to the highest levels throughout its history. And the fact that they're slow to want to give up the money is unsurprising to me. They don't have a very transparent process, and I haven't been a big fan, in case you can't tell, of the way it's organized and the kind of decisions that have been made in the past. And so I'm unsurprised by the behavior of the Olympic Committee at the moment.
It's not about surprise, though. I mean, like I'm saying, it's one thing to not be surprised, and I completely agree with you, Max. But there comes a point in time where it's unacceptable. We were looking at pro sports in the United States of America. We asked Major League Baseball, where the hell are you? Why are you asleep at the wheel? Before they ultimately suspended their season, at least for the first couple of weeks and beyond. We were asking these questions, and we excoriated the NCAA for dragging their feet before they ultimately canceled March Madness. Here we are talking about the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. You have athletes who obviously have been training for years and know that once the games come on, they absolutely positively must be ready. They're not being paid. They're amateur athletes, if you want to use that term, that train 4 years for these events. And the world has been told we need to practice social distancing. This coronavirus is no joke. Leagues upon leagues are losing billions of dollars. Leagues across the globe have been canceled. But the IOC, you haven't canceled the Olympics. You haven't postponed it or suspended it for a year. It makes absolutely no sense because it slaps everybody in the face in terms of talking about good health. You can't jeopardize people like this. You have to postpone the games.
Right.
You have no choice.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And very recently, even the statement was made, well, that we're not considering postponement. Yeah, like, you know, it's absurd.
It's ridiculous.
But that's the point. There are bad faith operators around the world right now who operate on their short-term incentives constantly. Whatever the thing is to win today. And then you'll worry about tomorrow, because you'll do the same thing then and then disavow what you said the day before. And those people should not be in leadership positions, particularly at times like this, because here's a time where you have to sacrifice your short-term gain for the long-term, literal health of everyone. And it doesn't seem to me that the Olympic Committee has been up to that challenge, and this is more of the same.
There's a lot of people that haven't been up to challenges in regards to this because this is something completely new, unexpected, and we get all of that. But it's not just about incompetence. It's incomprehensible to me how the world could be telling you our health is in danger, and everyone around you throughout the world has responded, but the Olympic Committee. That makes no sense.
The IOC has 4
and you're
weeks
jeopardizing the very health
to make
of your
that
athletes.
decision.
At the highest level of some governments, including ours, there have been the suggestion put out there in the last 24 hours that after a couple of weeks, let's reevaluate. Maybe the economy is more important than people's health, like insanity. So the kind of insanity that the Olympic leadership is showing is not, it's not unprecedented in our world today.
All right.
But at least the
there's
word
no economy if
suspension
people
and
aren't healthy.
postponement has been
And by the
associated
way,
with everybody else.
Stephen A.
That hasn't been associated with the
No
Olympics.
doubt.
They've done nothing. Nothing.
You're right, but we both know that they're going to have to anyway. They will have to.
Yeah. All right, let me get in one more NFL story here, guys, and I want to go back to Tampa's former quarterback. Jameis Winston posted a farewell to Tampa on Twitter over the weekend saying, "It's been a great 5 seasons as a Buccaneer. All love and respect. I love Tampa. I look forward to seeing y'all again in February. Super Bowl 55, 2020 vision, dream forever." Still no new squad for Jameis. Would you want Winston on your team, Stephen A.?
Yes, I would, as a backup in Pittsburgh to Big Ben Roethlisberger, where he's sitting back for a year and allowing it, to learn the game a little bit better and to slow down. The only problem I have with what Jameis Winston's statement is, he said, "See you in Tampa." Well, you played for Tampa in years, and half the time the people there would say you didn't show up. So why the hell should anybody believe you're going to show up for the Super Bowl next year? Ridiculous statement on his part. But other than that, it's cool.
What are you talking about? He didn't show up. He showed up for both teams, Stephen A. He was the best offensive player on both teams. I get why you'd want him on Pittsburgh. I wouldn't want him on my team. He's an interception machine. He's had a lot of off-field issues that would mean that he'd really have to be performing at a high level if you want to overcome your kind of ethical, quandary. Do you